With the Steam Deck on the horizon, there is a lot of people who are about to become Linux users. But with that, there is also a lot of people who have no idea what games are going to be supported. And sure, Valve has their testing program, and their testing program is great, but the bad part of it is they weren't doing a great job at getting the information out there. So unless you already have a Steam Deck, you didn't really know what games were going to work on it. But luckily, Valve has changed that and released this new tool. So this is hosted on the Steam Store website, and this breaks your library down into the 4 Steam Deck compatibility categories. We have deck verified games, deck playable games, unsupported deck games, and then untested games. For whatever reason, they decided to not show images for the untested games, only the number of games in that section. I have no idea why. Now, this list by itself is great. If you just want a general overview of where games are going to be sitting, this does basically all you need. But if we go and hover over any of the games, it'll give us this little button that says Steam Deck Compatibility. Clicking on that button is going to open up a prompt that tells you why the game is in that section. For games marked as verified, this isn't that exciting because you know the game is already meeting all of the Steam Deck criteria. If you don't know the criteria, there is a link to the verified program up at the top of the page. But for games that are playable, there is some interesting results in here. And it turns out my general theory about why a lot of games are going to drop down from verified into playable basically turned out to be true. So there's a lot of games out there which work really, really well under Linux. For example, Path of Exile, or Crypt of the Necrodancer, or Witcher 3. But for a game like, say, Is the Oath of Felghana, the reason why it drops down is because the interface isn't made to work perfectly with a controller. While you do have the little touchpads on the Steam Deck, these are not intended to be the main interaction method, and if it doesn't support general controller use, then at most it's going to be playable. Also, there's a lot of games like, say, Path of Exile, which their text entry system doesn't interact properly with the Steam Text API, whatever it's called, so it requires manual use of the on-screen keyboard. And then there's games like A Way Out, which use the Origin launcher, and the Origin launcher doesn't work with a controller. But then games like The Witcher 3 work perfectly under Linux, but are not made to be played on a, 6 or a 7-inch screen, so the text is too small. And then for the unsupported games, these generally fit into 2 separate categories. We have the anti-cheat games. These are games that you don't really have anywhere to get around. If you want to play the game in multiplayer and the game doesn't have anti-cheat support, it's just not going to work. But a lot of these games, for example, like the Halo Master Chief Collection, actually work perfectly in the single player. So you can play through the entire campaign of the entire collection, no problem whatsoever. So it is a really good idea that they show you why it is not working. Otherwise, you would see this game and think, it doesn't work entirely. And then other games generally have some sort of weird design decision which doesn't play nicely inside a Proton. And a lot of games fall into the exact same category, using weird proprietary codecs for their cutscenes. So games like Is Origin, Is Memories of Celceta, and Persona 4 Golden, they play perfectly until a cutscene happens. And because the codec isn't supported inside of the base version of Proton, the cutscene doesn't play, and generally when that happens, the game just soft locks and doesn't work anymore. My understanding is the latest version of Proton now supports P4G, and the Proton devs have specifically mentioned this. But I've seen other reports from people saying that it still doesn't work, and they're not really sure why they're saying it is working. So my guess is the game now does work on the Steam Deck, but it might not work in all cases. But they haven't gone and updated this list yet. Now, it's incredibly important to note that Valve's testing and Valve's data, while being really, really useful, is not the be-all and end-all of games that will play and play well on the Steam Deck. And I'm not talking about, getting rid of the Linux install and replacing it with Windows. I mean that just because a game is not on the verified or playable list doesn't mean the game won't play really, really well. For example, like Is 8, or maybe a more popular example, Final Fantasy 14. And just because a game is marked as unsupported doesn't mean the game is actually unsupported and can't be played. For example, all those cutscene issues we see with P4G, Is Memories of Celceta, all of those have already been fixed if you want to put the effort in. ProtonDB is an incredibly useful community resource where people do their own testing and report how the games are playing and potential fixes that might exist. And sure, maybe you just want a seamless gaming experience and you don't want to deal with this. That's fine, stick with Valve's list and don't play anything else. But if you want to play a specific game, even games Valve says aren't supported, a lot of the time you'll notice when you go to their game page, there are already fixes that exist. A general good rule of thumb is if the game isn't working in the base version of Proton, go and download a version of Proton GE. This is a custom version of Proton, which includes a lot of extra things like those codecs required for some cutscenes and various other changes that some games require. It certainly won't fix every game, but there's a lot of games out there that'll just start working. Back to Valve's list for a moment, there are two things I feel are missing from the list. Firstly, a way on the Valve website, the Steam website, to check every game that is currently verified, playable, and unsupported. Right now, this only shows games in my library, but maybe I don't care about just my library, maybe there's something else I want to see as well. And on that note, games that are in my wishlist. Why those aren't on here is absolutely beyond me. But some of that data can be found over on sites like ProtonDB and SteamDB. So on ProtonDB, you'll notice in the top right hand corner, there'll be a login button through Steam. So once you've done that, if you go to the Explore tab, now we can go and sort things by wishlisted and also deck verified, or by anti-cheat, exclude native, and things like that. It's certainly not as comprehensive with the categories as the Valve tool, but it does include wishlisted, and it does include everything on Steam as well. Just before, I briefly mentioned SteamDB, and I didn't want to make a full video on this, but I feel like people still need to know about it. So it seems like Apex Legends has Steam Deck compatibility in the works. So someone noticed that a couple of hours ago, a new branch appeared, being the Steam Deck testing branch. Now, this does not mean that Apex Legends is 100% coming to the Steam Deck. But what it does confirm, unless someone at the development studio is trolling everyone, they're at least working on it and they are looking into it. So it's very possible that sometime after the launch of the Steam Deck, that is going to be happening. Now, I cannot confirm the reason why they are doing this, but I would be very, very, very surprised if part of it wasn't due to the fact that Epic said that Fortnite isn't coming to the device, so they want to get in there first before anyone else does. I really hope they follow through in the support, even though I don't play Apex Legends, because Apex is a massive game, and I feel like by them doing this, it's going to encourage a lot of the other slower developers who haven't been looking at Steam Deck support to go and do it and make their anti-cheat work already, because even like the Call of Duty developers are doing this, and this is for like Black Ops 2. Also, I need to note something about SteamDB, because last time I used it as a resource, I got a bunch of comments from people who have no idea what the site is. So I used SteamDB as a resource last time to say, these are the games that Valve are saying they have supported, they have verified, they've tested, all of that fun stuff. And people complained because SteamDB is a third-party resource, and it's not Valve saying it, it's SteamDB saying it. That doesn't make any sense as a statement, because every bit of information on SteamDB is directly from Steam and directly from Valve. All of the information on this site is pulled from the Steam API, which is owned and operated by Valve. So you right now can get an API key, you can go and pull the exact same data they're pulling, and you're going to see there's no problem whatsoever. Yes, it is a third-party resource, but it is a third-party resource using first-party data. If it is coming from the Steam API, it is coming directly from Valve. I won't have a Steam Deck on launch, but maybe I'll buy one for a version 2 or something like that. But even if I don't buy one, the Steam Deck doing well and all this stuff going on around it is good for everybody gaming on Linux. Whether it's the improved anti-cheat support, whether it's the better versions of Proton, which may support proprietary codecs which weren't supported earlier, or any of the other stuff that's changing. With such a focus on Linux gaming right now, this is massively improving the space. So go and test your Steam library and let me know what games are working, or better yet, let me know what games are unsupported. I've been talking to some people and they've told me there are games on that list which they've played with the base version of Proton which say are unsupported. So I would love to know. And if you like this video, I'm going to go and like the video. If you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, words, outro, Patreon, subscribe star, leave a pay, down there, things, podcast, Tech of a Tea, gaming channel, Brodie Robertson Plays. That's going to be it for me. And, bye.